Welcome, welcome, welcome to Sisterhood Check-In. I am your author and host, Nadira Lewis, and I'm just going to give a few minutes just to make sure that everybody, that I make sure that I can hear myself. So give me 1 second. I'm going to just do a sound check and make sure that I can actually hear myself and that I'm actually showing myself to be live on my page, because I know sometimes when I actually go live, I'm not actually there. So, okay, yes, I am live. Yay! So, hello. I hope everybody is doing well. I'm excited to be back doing live. I've had a lot of things going on, and my previous personal page was hacked and deactivated. So, as a result of that, I lost a lot of my information and stuff that was on that page, but it's okay. Starting new is not always bad, because sometimes when you're starting new, you're starting from experience, not from scratch. So I am grateful for the opportunity to be able to start again. So for those of you that are meeting me here at Sisterhood Check-In for the very first time, welcome. Welcome to the broadcast. If you are watching us via YouTube, make sure you hit the subscribe button, hit the notification button so that you can be notified every time we upload a video. If you are watching us here on Facebook, on Instagram, TikTok, or Twitter, make sure you click like and share if you are blessed by every time that you actually turn on and get to see us each and every Friday. And for those of you that are new to Sisterhood Check-In and haven't seen our broadcast before, we are here every Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, and 10 p.m. Eastern Time and 7 p.m. Pacific Time. So if you are watching us live, thank you for watching. We appreciate you. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and play this quick video to encourage you before we begin. And then after that, we're going to go ahead and get into today's topic, where we're going to talk about purpose and destiny. And we're not going to talk about it from a way that seems like, oh, everybody talks about purpose and destiny. I really want to talk about it from a perspective of obedience, because a lot of the times we don't realize that our destiny is tied to our obedience. So we'll be right back after this. Make sure you call up your girlfriends and tell them Sisterhood Check-In is on the air. I'll be right back after this.
Sometimes it's not enough to be reminded that Jesus hasn't left you or forgotten you. We need to declare it over ourselves, over others. No matter the season you may find yourself in, no matter the depths of darkness you're wading through, you can join him in declaring the truth that God is light upon your feet, whether or not you can see the next step, that God is your strength, even though the weight of life seems to be crushing you down. And that when your job, your marriage, your relationship, your health feels like it's coming to a dead end, there is only one God that can make dead things live again. These are his promises, and they're the only thing you need to declare over your life. So as you step into this next season or this next moment, you can declare that God's not done with you. He's just getting started. You can declare that the good work that he has started in you, he will surely complete it. You can declare that the same God that parted the seas goes before you, goes behind you. You can declare these promises over your life, over your family's life, over the people passing on the street. You can declare these truths over every circumstance, over every season of your life. You can declare that every day belongs to him and every new breath belongs to him. Because we have the power of a living God living inside of us. And this
All right. And we are back here on Sisterhood Check In. Thank you to everybody that is watching us, that will be watching us live, and that will also be watching us on the replay. Again, if you are watching us on the replay, then make sure you put hashtag replay and let me know where you are watching from, whether you're watching live or whether you're watching on the replay. Let me know what city and state that you're in. But it's interesting that in the video that I just played, it talked about how we have a living God on the inside of us, right? And I wanted to talk a little bit of today about, some conversations that I've had, because this is a sisterhood check-in, right? I've had some conversations in regards to different thought processes that I've had during the week. And a lot of my thought processes were speared off of things that I have been meditating and thinking on. And one of the things I was saying, I was talking to my business partner, and I was telling him that, you know, one of the things that I'm realizing in this season of my life is the importance of putting purpose before anything. Understanding, because that's the mind of Christ. The mind of Christ is to do the will of God for his life, right? Do the will of God, to be obedient and submissive to whatever God calls him to be. And that takes a process to actually do. And it takes a level of awareness of your purpose. It takes a level of understanding the significance and why you're even here, right? Because sometimes we're living life and we're living, going through the everyday, mundane stuff, going to work, coming home, being a parent, if you're a parent, taking care of our husband or wife if you're married. And then we eat, watch TV, and go to sleep, and we start the process all over again. And what happens is that sometimes, as a, when we're going through our day-to-day life, if we don't, I had said this earlier, I did a video, and I said that we have to learn how to be good stewards over our mind, because sometimes we're in the consuming mode all the time. We're consuming so much. We have about five different types of platforms that pump information into our mind every time we access it. And not that doesn't even include what we do when we're watching TV and we're consuming, four, five, six, seven television shows in the daytime. That doesn't even include the conversations that we're having on the phone, the three, four, five conversations you're having on the phone, the conversations that you're having even at home. We are constantly consuming so much information that it's a wonder why we are always in anxiety mode, why we are always fighting clarity on what to do next in our life, because our brain is crowded, because we're always in consumption mode. And I don't really believe that it's the will of God for us to consume everything in regards to everybody's life and everything in every situation, because you will literally be overwhelmed. And when it comes time to you, and the reason why I say that, because I love TikTok, right? So I found myself one day scrolling on TikTok, and I found myself scrolling on TikTok, and I looked up and like 2 hours went by. And I said to myself, like, wait a minute. I went from laying in the bed watching TikTok at around, I want to say around 10. And next thing you know, it was like 12, almost 1 o'clock in the morning. So almost 3 hours. I was like scrolling on TikTok, laughing, joking. And then I realized, oh my gosh, I was so exhausted for the next day that I got frustrated, because there's some things that I should have been doing, right? There's some things that I needed to do, because I took a moment to take a break, to consume, to break away from all the responsibilities and the chaos and things I had to do. I thought, well, let me take a few minutes and kind of focus, just kind of laugh a little bit. And that's fine, right? But when you're spending hours on consuming, then what happens is when it comes time for you to apply the things that you are learning, then it becomes chaotic, right? Then you get overwhelmed. Then you start feeling like there's not enough time in the day to do the things that you need to do. Then you start feeling like, oh, so what I have learned is I've decided that I was going to be more purposeful in my day-to-day activities. So that means from the time that I wake up, I am responsible for everything that happens to me within my control for that day. So if I get up in the morning and I know that I have 4 or 5 different things to do on my list, of things to do, right? Then my priority is going to be to get those things done first before I entertain doing anything else. But what happens is there are times when we just take a break, and next thing you know, we're scrolling on our social media, and then next thing you know, we didn't do anything that we need to get done. We didn't get anything accomplished, and then next thing you know, we're frustrated because the day done went by. So when I was taking a nap early and I was laying down. Well, actually, it wasn't even a nap time. I woke up this morning because I went to sleep and I was determined that today I was going to take a day. When usually on Fridays when I'm uh, actually recording Sisterhood Check-in, I really like to take that day off because I really like to take that day to really just sit still and meditate and kind of see, what direction God may want me to go for Sisterhood Check-in. So it's not always the time that I get to do that, but today I was laying in the bed and I got up and I said, I'm going to lay here. And though I have a million and one different things that I could be doing and should be doing, the Lord really like spoke into it was like so plain. He put in my spirit purpose over everything, purpose over money, purpose over. And I thought, and I was like, wow, okay. So I'm learning that when God speaks something or puts something in my spirit, I'm learning from not to question it, not to, because sometimes we're praying and we asking God for stuff and he gives us a strategy in a vision. We're saying, God, I need a confirmation. I need you to confirm what he did. You prayed about something. You even sometimes may have not even opened up your mouth, but you may have pondered it in your heart. The Lord gave you a vision about it, which is your answer, right? When he gives you a vision on what to do, that is your answer. But what we do is we go take it to somebody else or something else and ask God to give us more confirmation, as if God is not clear when he speaks to us in the first place. When the Bible tells us God speak once, he speak twice, but man does not perceive it. So it's not that God is not giving us direction on what to do. We are not perceiving it because our brain is clouded with all this stuff that we got going on. Our brain is overwhelmed. We are consuming so much that it's very difficult in this day and time to really hear when God is talking to us. So what happens is we have to go in a dream. He has to talk to us in a dream, right? So if God is showing you something multiple times, sometimes we get excited. We're like, oh, God showed us that, when really God is showing you things because you're not listening. If he has to confirm it, that means you have not perceived it the first time he shared it with you. If he has to give it to you over and over again, or you need constant confirmation, that means you need to spend more time. It tells you the area where you need to do the most work. You need to spend more time understanding his voice so that when he leads you in a particular area, you know that it's him, because he said, my sheep knows my voice, right? And if you don't know God's voice to know when he's speaking to you, if you don't know when God is leading you in a particular direction, it is not because he is not talking. It is because you have yet to perceive it, right? That's because you have consumed your life with so many other things that you are not really hearing when God is sharing your next instructions with you, right? And so what I did was I was laying in my brain because I was thinking, I got to get up, I got to do this, I got to do that, because I'm an entrepreneur, so I have, my time is always filled with different things that I'm doing to actually generate income, because I am a mother, right? I'm a mother, and so I have to make sure that I'm constantly providing for my kids. So in that thought process, when I wake up in the morning, I'm always thinking about what I need to do in that day, what I need to take care. And the Lord just stopped me in the middle of me before I even opened my eyes. And he said, purpose over money. And I thought, purpose over money, like, okay, okay. And I knew exactly what he meant by that. I knew that I needed to spend time resting so that I can keep my spirit open. Because with me, one of the things, and I shared this with my partner all the time, and I've shared this with some of my friends, I said, man, the biggest thing with me, I always used to struggle with, is knowing what to do next. Knowing what to do, because it was like, oh, I know God told me this, but I don't know. I don't know if I want to do this, or I don't know. It's always as if I really have a choice when it comes to things that he calls me to do. I mean, you do ultimately have a choice, but it's either, I mean, why wouldn't you choose the will of God, or his perfect will versus his permissive will, right? So And I realized my destiny is tied to my obedience. And the Lord would begin to show me that your provisions, right? See, this is the part we don't really look at, right? This is the part we don't really talk about. When he said, seek first the kingdom of God and all of his right way of doing things, right? And then these things will be added to you. But what happens is we spend more time going after things, going after the money, going after the stuff, that we don't take time to pursue. Not just, and when we think of righteousness, we think of going to church, we think of, um reading our Bible. Those things are part of it, being able to have but seeking the right way of doing things is finding out his mind about the situation, right? Let this mind be in you, which is also in Christ Jesus, which means allow the mind of God to be in you, right? Because when we have the mind of God on the inside of us, then it doesn't mean that we won't struggle in terms of what we're going to feel emotionally, right? Because we're human beings, right? We're not human doings, we're human beings. So we are going to feel, being a follower or a believer in Christ doesn't exempt us from having emotions, right? But the reality is, when we say let this mind, that means that though externally we may feel a certain way, we're going to allow his mind, his way of doing things, to consume our mind, right? So that we can renew our mind, right? And then once we renew our mind, once we consume and let his mind be in us, then what happens is we're not in overwhelm, right? Because now everything that we do in purpose. Everything that we do on purpose. Everything we do with a purpose. And everything that we do on purpose, with purpose, on purpose, for purpose, right? And so I laid down and I said to myself, I said, I'm going to sit here and I was going to rest. And I thought, and I was talking to my daughter and I thought, wow, why is it so hard for me to really sit down and rest? Because I am so used to programming my body to go, 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 that and I'm always saying I want an opportunity to just rest. I want an opportunity to just relax. But what happens is when that opportunity presents itself, then all of a sudden I get used to going into, and I default to what I normally do. So what I had to do was say, you know what, Nadira, I'm going to take this time and you're going to lay down and you're going to rest. And you're going to not just rest physically, you're going to rest emotionally, you're going to rest spiritually. You're going to I'm not going to get on social media. I'm just going to sit here and I'm going to lay here and allow my brain to deprogram from consuming all the time. And that's exactly what I did. I laid down and I took a really good nap and I woke up with such clarity. I woke up, it didn't mean that the things that I had to do still didn't need to be done, but I was able to think more clearly on how to even handle those things, right? Because now I'm looking at it from a mind of clarity. My mind is not clouded. Now I'm not consuming. I didn't feel the urge to get up and scroll all day long, right? And so what I did was I got up, I took a nap, and I said, okay, I'm going to take some time and I'm going to listen. And this is one of the things I said, is that when you start listening, and meditating and stuff like that, not to even consume yourself, because you can consume yourself with a lot of good stuff too, right? And I realized, no, let me just take a minute and let me just listen to one podcast, right? And I'm going to take that one podcast and I'm going to extract the wisdom from that one podcast, right? And I'm going to sit on it and I'm going to sit in it and I'm going to allow the wisdom and the information that I extract from there to internalize. I'm going to allow it to internalize so that I can apply it, right? And I did. I heard some really amazing stuff that was in alignment with what I was actually reading, and I started, and what I was listening to, and what God was really kind of just speaking to me throughout the week. And I said to myself, I said, okay, you know what? Now it's not going to be difficult for me to show up, where before I would be nervous and be like, oh, I don't want to get on sisterhood check-in, because I've always had to feel like everything had to be in order. Everything had to be a specific way. But what I realize is it's not about me. It's about me. It's about purpose, doing things on purpose, for purpose, with a purpose. And so I started realizing that whatever wisdom or information that I share is going to help somebody else, whether it's one person or many. But I have to prepare myself as if I'm talking to many, right? Because I don't know, these podcasts are, and these broadcasts could be here for eternity. It's on YouTube, Facebook, and ain't no telling how long. Somebody may look at this 5 years from now and be able to be like, wow, right? Because the way I see it is that when God speaks to us, he never just speaks to us for here and now. He always speaks to us, through us, to be able to help somebody else, right? And so I started to look at some of the things that I learned, and I said, you know what? I'm going to sit in this. I'm going to meditate on this so that I can no longer be an information holder, right? Because we live in a time where information is huge. We are constantly pouring out information, right? Constantly pouring out information, right? And we have very little application because we are in constant consumer mode, that when we do stop to try to apply some of the information, we are so backed up in consumption that we're trying to figure out, what was it that I heard? We're not even containing, half the stuff that we're listening and watching, right? And so I took some time and I sat back and I said, you know what? And it made doing this podcast actually a lot easier than I've ever done it, right? And I've been doing Sisterhood Check-In for over 3 years now. And it made me show up different, because now I realize is that once I take the time to sit in what God has shown me, sit in the lessons that God was teaching me, right? Now I can be able to position myself for him to use those lessons that I learned to help you that are watching. So I'm going to go ahead and take a quick break. And then when we get back, we're going to go ahead and continue with today's topic about, we're talking about so many things about purpose, right? So go ahead and get you some coffee and your tea. I got my coffee and tea. I'm going to take some time and drink my coffee and tea. And if you haven't done so already, make sure you call up your girlfriends and tell them Sisterhood Check-In is on the air. And I'll be right back after this.
May not be physically with you.
They're in your church.
But I am sitting next to you.
Different face.
Different name. Same story, though, that goes like this.
I've done some terrible things in my life.
Some of them I chose to do.
And I own these choices.
But others, I just feel like I was swept up in a series of circumstances that didn't involve my will.
They just sort of happened to me.
I've become the culmination of those choices and circumstances.
So I guess I just need to say it.
I really need some help.
Hello, my name is Thomas Taylor III, CEO of TaylorYourDreams.com. I actually help individuals expand their vision past their current reality so they can live the life that they dreamed of. If that's you, you can reach out, you can hit me up, and actually have a free consultation. But until then, go ahead and make it a great day.
Hi, I'm Nadira, author, life, and business coach, and founder of the Becoming a Woman of Proverbs Wisdom Academy, and also the founder of the Sisterhood Check-In podcast. I help women take their life experiences and turn them into life lessons for others. Book a call with me at www.womanofproverbscoaching.com, and I'll see you on the other side. Have an amazing day. There's seasons in that our gifts operate and flow in. There's seasons. And if you miss your season or your moment, your gift may not be no longer useful. Because if he called a generation to ask a question or to need something in a specific season, and he birthed you for that season, you're useless if you don't operate in your season.
Listen, Nadira, listen. You're doing it again. You're doing it again. Now you do it.
is to have an everyday guardian angel watching over us, how we can feel them, and how captivating it is to be so lucky to have loved them, known them, and to remember every single memory, no matter.
All right, and welcome back to Sisterhood Check-In. And I wanted to kind of share with you guys, I'm really, since we're talking about purpose, I'm like really, I just created this journal. It's called the Grieving Families Journal and Devotion. 365 days of healing. It's really amazing. I just got a proof of it to look at it and see. But talking about purpose, I was sitting at my desk. I think it was like 2 weeks ago, right? And it's funny because this project usually, my first book, it took me forever to write it. It took me 3 years to write one chapter. And then one day I just sat down and I was like, during COVID, and I just began to think about all the things that God has brought me through. And I wrote my first book in literally less than a month and had it self-published and everything. And so when I went to go do this journal, all right, a Grieving Families Journal and Devotional, right? I was really proud of this particular project simply because of the fact I was sitting down and I was laying down, and as I was laying down, I had to make sure because my daughter was trying to help me get prepared while I was getting ready for Sisterhood Check-In. It's funny, but so I was sitting at my desk and I was like, thinking about some things that I was doing. I was working on doing some studying in some other areas, and the thought just came across to me, and that's why I said earlier, sometimes we're asking God for things and he gives us a vision and he shows us something which is the answer, right? But what we do is we don't take it seriously. And I can't tell you how many things that God has put in my spirit to do from back in 2000 that I literally just kind of just looked at it as I didn't really take it seriously. I kind of just like overlooked it and was just like, oh, well, maybe it's not the timing or whatever. And I kind of just chucked it to the side. And I promise you, when I look back years later, he's given that vision because I didn't fall through with it. He's given that vision to somebody else and they've seen it and they've actually became millionaires off of it. Right. And I started to say to myself, like, and one of my friends reached out to me. It's like, hey, Nadir, you remember when you share with us this vision about such and such, and oh my God, did you see these companies that they're doing the exact same thing that you were doing there? And I was like, wow. And so I started to realize how I was taking it very lightly, the things that God was putting in my heart and in my spirit, because I was looking at my current situation and I wasn't thinking purpose. I was over here figuring out, well, how am I going to do that? How am I going to do that? Our job is to write it, make it plain, right? And allow God and allow God to show us our next steps, right? And so I felt like God was trusting me with a lot of the things he was putting on my heart, but I was always seeking for confirmation, even though he already shared it with me. When God gives you something, that is the confirmation. It is the answer to whatever it is that you're asking, right? Or it's the answer to whatever question your heart, your mind, or your spirit is asking, right? When it is a part of your purpose. But with me, I kept looking outside of what he placed on the inside of me because I was feeling like I needed to do, I needed more confirmation, more understanding, instead of going to him and asking him for understanding instead of asking him for confirmation. I should have been asking for understanding and direction on how to get it done, right? But because I was still struggling to believe that he would consider somebody like me, right? Because I was looking at everything concerning my thought process and how I think and the things that make up how I think the way I do. I started to see all these insignificant reasons why I didn't feel qualified, right, to do some of the things that he did. And so I sat back and I said, you know what? And so it was like, when I thought about it, I said, God, I'm not going to do that again. I started to write this journal. I started to create this journal, and I started to think about how he showed me, because anything that God give us a purpose plan for, it's to address a certain need, right, in the earth, right? And so I saw a need, and it was just grieving my heart so bad. It was grieving my heart so bad. And I started to think about when I had suffered loss. And when I lost my husband and I started to think about the emotional ups and downs, and when I lost my aunt and what I felt and the things like that, and I started to think about the process of what I went through in those moments. And I started to realize, and God put it in my heart to create a grief journal, right? And a devotional for families, because sometimes in my experience, everybody that comes to your aid, they really do have a genuine heart to console you and to help you get through a process. But sometimes, because of your emotional state, you're not in a position to want to be open because you're still trying to process everything that's taking place. So when people come in with right intention to help, sometimes they just don't know how to. And so in this journal, I kind of give a way to help families, right, that are grieving the loss of a loved one, how to cope, how to get through it, right? So, which is some of the ways that how I got through my loss, right? And just a devotional, to kind of help you, to remind you of God's promises and to remind you, because I think sometimes we need to be reminded of that even though there's some things that happen in our life that we simply have no control over, that God still has a purpose in, that He still, even in the midst. And sometimes I have to even be careful with saying that, because we don't want to implement or imply that God is making this stuff happen, because we know that God doesn't make stuff happen, but He will sometimes allow things to happen. And I say allow because sometimes people always ask the question, well, why does God allow this? And why did He this? And why does He this? And why does He that? And I really believe that in all those questions, which are right, there's nothing wrong with asking those questions. I just believe that when we get before God, some of those questions that we say we're going to ask is not even going to really matter. But this journal was kind of there to kind of help you cope. And it's a 365 day journal. You'll be getting, it is a subscription based journal. So every month it'll be a new journal to kind of help those that are coping through the holiday seasons, because there's holiday season in every season. There's some, right now we got Thanksgiving and Christmas, and then in the first quarter of the year, you got Mother's Day and New Year's, and then after that you have Father's Day, and then there's always in every 3 months there's always some sort of holiday where different, depending on where when you lost a loved one, that can trigger those emotions when you're dealing with certain things. So this journal, I believe, will be a blessing to help those that actually use it and apply some of the things that I actually say. So back to my original thing I was saying is that, the whole purpose, and I didn't put it up here, but the topic we're talking about, understanding the value of purpose. And when I say understanding the value of purpose, which means that we have to understand that when you look in hindsight at your life, right? How many of us adults have looked at our lives in hindsight and saw that God has brought us through a lot of really hard places, right? Whether it's emotionally, physically. We have all come through some of us have come through some really hard places, right? And so hindsight give us an understanding, right? Once we submit our will to God, and once we allow God to show us, pretty much what to do with the things that we've overcome. Because I look at it like this: if He allowed us to overcome it, then that means He has a purpose for it, right? Which means that He can use whatever it is that you go through. I mean, look at it. Look at everybody who is anybody, right? Or who's out here and they have a lot of influence in a particular area. When you look at the backstory of their lives, right? Most people who are marriage counselors, who are successful at helping people navigate through marriage counseling, um, have gone through some stuff in their marriage, right? They have, showed up and done the work, and they have put in the effort to make their marriage work, and they can show you how to navigate through that. And you have some people who show up and they may have lost a child or a family member. Next thing you know, they're standing up and they're, showing you how to cope in those areas. And so I believe that sometimes when we overcome different things, that God can use those things to help other people cope, right? That's what, we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of our testimony. What are some things that you have gone through in your life that positions you, right? That you have overcome, right? And that you're continuously growing from, that you are in a position to help other people go through it. But if you are still in that position where you are still hurting, right? And you are still seeking for answers and getting consoled in your own life, it may be an opportunity, it may be time for you to step back and put yourself first and allow God to heal you. I never attempted to help anybody else heal in the midst of my healing process, because there was certain areas that I was still needing tremendous amount of time in. And so it wasn't until I felt like God was healing me and I was going through the process that I started to realize, okay, now I'm in a position I can help somebody cope, which is why I came up with the journal, right? And it was very emotional when I did it. When I created this journal, I was very emotional because I knew how much journaling impacted my life with overcoming and coping with some of the things. And I'm not saying it's the end all be all, but I realized that for the events to take place in my life, documenting my journey and documenting, and not just documenting how I feel, but documenting my prayers and the things that I've asked God for and Him responding, to my heart, because the Bible says the Lord is close to them that are of a broken heart, right? My heart was broken in a lot of areas in so many different circumstances. And so journaling, it was crazy, y'all, because one day I was journaling and wasn't even seeking the answer on anything because I didn't think anything was wrong, right? And the Lord showed me a particular situation so plainly in my writing. I was almost like, I was kind of like taken back. And then when it came to pass, I was shocked. I was like, when I tell you I was shocked, I was like, wow. So there is God really, when we're writing, we're getting some, especially when there's so many different emotions, we're getting that out, right? Because let's be honest, not everybody is going to, even though I recommend highly, you know, to be able to have therapy, because I know sometimes people don't like therapy, but I think therapy helps, right? To have somebody to talk you through and help you dealing, coping with different things. And so, you know, but journaling, everybody will write how they feel, right? And sometimes that is a first level. Sometimes that's can be the first step to healing, is being able to get all of those emotions and that poison out, right? Because once you write it out, it's almost like you're releasing some of the pain, and it doesn't necessarily take away, but it will help you to be able to see how far you've come in your healing process, because you might be journaling one way in the beginning, right? And then all of a sudden you realize in the middle of your process you're journaling and God is speaking to you and giving you insight into certain things, and you begin to go back and look at your writing and be like, wow, I've come so far. I didn't realize that I was even in that bad of a mindset. I didn't even realize that, right? Until you go back and you look at your journals and you look and say, wow, excuse me, that God really was walking with me. It's almost like that painting that talks about footprints. And it says how I look back and I saw that God was walking with me in the sand the whole time. And that's really what happens. God, allows us, if He allows you to make it through any particular situation in your life, um once you step on the other side, you begin to see things in hindsight, and you begin to see that though I didn't plan for this to happen, that God had a purpose in this, and that somebody's going to benefit from my story. So make sure you put in the comments and let me know what is your story. What are some things that you've overcome? What are some things that you may have faced that you may feel like um, somebody can benefit from learning when it comes to something that you've overcome? I'd love to be able to hear that from you. And so I'm gonna go ahead and end the broadcast. I just wanted to go ahead and get that out and let you know that Black Friday, the journal Grieving Families Journal and Devotional will be available for those of you that have loved ones that may have passed away and you want to find a way on how to cope. It has some really good stuff in here. Like I said, it's a journal and a devotional. And we basically go over in the journal ways that you can be able to cope. And I have a personal letter with my own story on the back of it. It will be available Black Friday. So you will be able to go to womanofproverbs.com. And I'm going to go ahead and put that here in the website. You will be able to go to womanofproverbs.com to be able to purchase it. So the website right now is currently being updated. However, it is available still. You can still go and visit the website and be able to check out some of the things that I have available for Black Friday. So thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate every one of you that are watching live and those that will be watching on the replay. And I look forward to seeing you next Friday. And remember, if you have a testimony that you would like to share here on the Sisterhood broadcast, Sisterhood Check-In broadcast, send me an inbox at sisterhoodcheckin@gmail.com and let me know. And I'll be more than happy to be able to interview you and see some of the things that God has helped you to overcome. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next week. Hi. Do you have a testimonial that you would like to share here with the Sisterhood Check-In audience? We'd love to hear from you. Make sure you send me an email at becomingawomanof.proverbs@gmail.com, or you can send me a message on Facebook at the @handle Woman of Prov. And we'd love to share and hear all the wonderful things that God has done in your life too. Have a wonderful day.